Welcome back to another episode of the Parks and Bennis podcast, where me and Aaron and another guest or two guests usually discuss the football, the Premier League, and what's going on. Today is an end of season special of the podcast as the Premier League season finished on Sunday. We'll just go through the league, discussing all the teams, how they've done, and marking out of 10. And some end of season awards to wrap it up. First of all, lads, are we doing okay?
Doing well, yeah. Very well.
Yeah, I'm doing all right, to be honest. Now we've stayed up, I'm doing even better. I'm sure Aaron's not too happy about Watford's end of season, but I'm doing all right.
Thoughts about relegation and negative lights from being.
Yeah, well, I mean, the last time the three of us were on was, I think, just before Watford and Norwich was playing or something like that. And I said if Watford didn't win Norwich and Newcastle, they'd definitely be gone. They ended up winning them both, and they still managed to get relegated, and don't quite know how that one worked out.
Yeah, I think we all thought we all thought Bournemouth were definitely gone, and they showed some heart towards the end of the season. Still ended up going, but and then we thought Villa was gone as well. But once again, they displayed some good performances at the end of the season, and in the end, well, apart from Hawkeye, they deserved to stay up.
Yeah,
The crazy thing is, we were 7 points clear after the Newcastle game. Obviously,
hilarious.
Before Bournemouth beat Leicester, but I got a bit excited after that Newcastle. Don't lie.
Yeah, I do think you should sue Hawkeye personally, but
I mean, would it make any difference to Watford? They wouldn't have stayed up even with it.
Oh, right, Bournemouth sue him then. Watford, you didn't deserve to stay up anyway.
Bloody tactics of the season.
Anyway, we'll discuss all that soon. Unfortunately, we've got to start at the top. Alfie, what's your mark out of 10 for the season for Liverpool?
I don't think it's fair to give him a 10 out of 10 because there's been better Premier League seasons overall. I'd give him 9.5. The job Jurgen Klopp has done is incredible. They've been brilliant. Yeah, I'll give him 9.5, and they're 1 point off 100 points. And I reckon if they didn't win the league so early, they would have had that momentum to get the 100-point mark.
Yeah, Aaron.
I think can give a 10 out of 10 because ultimately they won the league by very, very early on. They were 20 points clear at the start. Finished on 99 points, just missed out on 100 in the end, but you can't knock what Liverpool have achieved this season.
Yeah, I just think they should be deducted 0.5 points for losing to Watford.
Personally, I'm going to give Liverpool a 9, and whilst the 99 points is brilliant, they've still only won one trophy really this season that counts. So the teams of the past have won 2 or 3. You would have given an 8 to. So I'm going to give Liverpool a 9. They were brilliant up until Atletico Madrid came to town, and they ruined it all for them, didn't they?
Yeah.
I'm still going to pin us on their lack of form at the end, but anyway.
Yeah, well, less said about Liverpool, the better.
At least you've got something to be happy about this season then, Aaron.
That's about it, yeah.
Yeah. Man City, what are you giving them out of 10?
Let's see. I do think it's fair to say they underperformed, but I don't think it's necessarily a surprise considering how difficult it would be to keep up the form they've shown in the last 2 seasons for 3. So rating, I'll probably give them 5 out of 10 because they finished second. They finished well above third, but they're too far off the top of the league. Who knows? If they do well in the Champions League, then that rating could immediately come up.
Yeah. Alfie.
I'd give them a 6. They've obviously still been brilliant, but for the money they've spent, they've been so far off Liverpool. I'd just give them a 6 probably.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd lean towards a 6 out of 10. They've still won the League Cup now, which is nothing really because they win that every year. But they've been so far off it. They've scored 102 goals and finished second. And that for me deserves a 1 because I don't know how you quite manage that. But anyway,
I think they had obviously injury worries. They sold company and they lost Laporte for a long time to injury, which meant they had to play John Stones and Nicolas Otamendi and even Fernandinho at the back. So that obviously hasn't helped, but I fully expect it to be a lot stronger next year.
Mhm.
yeah. I think with Man City, it's just about them getting the first goal in the game. If they do that consistently, they'll be very close to winning the league. Because once they get a lead in the game, it's so difficult to take the ball off them. And if you get the first goal against them, you can do a little bit more digging in than you would do at 1-0. So for me, it's all about Man City finding some consistency, a good start, and then they could possibly go again. Man United, what would you give them, Aaron?
Well, pretty much after Bruno Fernandes arrived at Man United, that's completely changed their season because previously, I can't remember exactly, but they were towards like 9th, 10th-ish. They were not looking good at all. Back then, probably would have given a 3 or 4 maybe at push, but now I'll give Solskjaer credit where it's due as well. The last few months, pretty much since Fernandes arrived, they've been magnificent. I don't know how many games they've actually lost, but they've won the vast majority. Finished third is a very good achievement considering the first half of the season. So I think you're looking at a 7 or an 8 maybe for Man United.
Alfie?
Well, it's been a tale of two halves of the season for United. I don't know where they was at Christmas, maybe 12th, was they? Christmas.
Yeah.
And
I think after Newcastle beat them 1-0 in November, they were like 14th.
Yeah. They've really stepped it up, as Aaron said, since Fernandes has come in. But I also think the fact they've been playing Greenwood a lot more instead of Dan James has helped them a lot. And it's just added a lot of goals to their team. So overall, I'd probably give him a 7.5. Third at the start of the season, if you ask United fans if they take third, it's probably the best they could have hoped for. It's not been an easy road, but I'd give them 7.5.
Yeah, and I remember watching Man United before Fernandes arrived. I think it was I can't remember who it was against, but it was a Europa League game. It was the final game they played before he arrived, and they just looked so devoid of any creativity. But you can just see the impact Bruno Fernandes has alongside Paul Pogba and a proper defensive midfielder next season. I know McTominay's done all right, but if they can improve that, then I think that could be a force next season.
They would need a good start again. No, they couldn't do this thing where they start poorly and then recover again because I'm not sure that's improvement. They need to start well and then from there we'll see where it takes them. I think they've done well. I'm going to give them an 8 because I feel like third at the start of the season for United, plus they're still within a shout for the Europa League. I think they would have taken that. I think it's a good 8. Third's a good season for them and I'll give them an 8. Chelsea, where do you stand with them, Alfie?
They've obviously had a great season. If you asked Chelsea at the start of the season whether they'd take fourth, they would have obviously said yes. It was a team which had no experience. A lot of players who used to play in the Championship, the likes of Tammy Abraham, the likes of Mason Mount, and they've stepped up to the plate really. Pulisic has impressed me as well, and I think overall I'd give Chelsea an 8 just because nobody expected them to get top 4, but I do think they have lost 12 games, which isn't great, and losing to West Ham twice is the equivalent of getting bit on the arse by a badger and then allowing it to do it again. So that's not great, but overall I'd give them a 7.5 or 8. Sorry, 8.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think an 8 out of 10 is fair for Chelsea because a lot of people criticised them in the summer. A lot of eyebrows were raised from the appointment of Frank Lampard because one season at Derby, finished 6th, didn't take them up. It wasn't that impressive. Then you're looking at the opening day of the season where they lost 4-0 to Man United, and people were really, they were thinking, okay, this is going to be a disaster for them. They'll finish mid-table, maybe 6th at a push. But again, they've really impressed me as the season's gone on. They've scored a lot of goals. Tammy Abraham's done well on the whole. again, Pulisic's been very, very good. Kovacic has been a big improvement on last season. And again, with the arrivals of Timo Werner and Hakim Ziyech and whoever else comes in, like United, like the top of the league could be very fun to watch next year.
Yeah, I think that if they improve defensively and find a bit of steel where they've lacked at times, I think they've got the firepower to really challenge that front two. You've they're the type of team that if you're going into the last 20 minutes against next season and it's 1-1, you put your house on it being 2-1 to Chelsea because they've got so much firepower, confidence now because Lampard's at that first season. And I feel like they could be in for a good season next season if they improve defensively and replace the goalkeeper. As for what I would give them, again, I would say an 8 because they've exceeded my expectations for them. I had them around 5th or 6th to 7th. I thought they'd be way short, but no, to be fair to them, they've been excellent, and 8 out of 10 I think seems fair. But Aaron, what would you give Leicester?
I know you like to criticise Brendan Rodgers. Certainly during the second half of the season, it's totally fair. But I think on the whole, you've got to give them credit. Even 5th is a very good achievement. I know they dropped off; they were 3rd for pretty much the entire campaign. But on the whole, it's been a solid season. To qualify for Europe, to break up the top 6 for the first time, I believe, since 15-16, since they won the league, I believe it's the first time a team's broke into the top 6.
Yeah.
So, like I said, they've done well. They've got a number of good players, and they need to strengthen in the summer. But for this season, I'd give them a strong 7 or maybe an 8.
Alfie?
Somebody get Brendan Rodgers a Buxton water bottle because he's bottled top 4 and he bottled the title at Liverpool. But apart from that, Leicester have done very well. I'd say I actually expected them to be in and around the top 6. I think I had them 5th or 6th. And they've done very well. First half of the season, I think they were 2nd or 3rd in the league. The second half of the season, they've been disgraceful. But Europa League, if you would have asked the Leicester fan at the start of the season if they would have took Europa League, they would have said yes. So overall, I'd give them an 8.5.
I'm not all that convinced on them. I feel like they started with a house on fire because they had that momentum, and because they were so painfully dull, apparently under club. Well, I don't believe that for a minute because they're still Leicester City at the end of the day, and so 5th is an excellent finish, but they've really, really petered out. I think in if you got the second half of the season in a table, they'd be 15th, and that's way below anything but the first half or second, so you've got to balance that out. I'd give them a 7. So I think the first half of the season has been 9, but the second half of the season has been a 3.
Yeah, I was going to say, you could literally split a season into 2 halves because one of them was excellent and one of them was so far from it.
Yeah, 7 I would give them. What would you give Tottenham, Aaron?
They really underachieved from what I predicted. I thought at the start of the season you had Liverpool and City, who you knew were going to be in the top 2, but with Pochettino in charge and you reached the Champions League final last year, I thought they had 3rd nailed down, but they just haven't.
Yeah.
They just haven't done it. They were 14th when Pochettino was sacked. They brought in Mourinho, who's done. You can't not that job. 14th to 6th. But I think on the whole, you've got to be critical of the fact that they just haven't been that good throughout the season. They haven't shown any consistency, and underperforming is the word. So I think probably 4 or 5 is probably fair because 6th is good, but it shouldn't be their standard.
Alfie?
I think 5 is very, very generous for Tottenham Scum. I would give them a 3.5. I would say I don't think they performed that well overall. Mourinho has done a better job than a lot of people will say. As Aaron said, when he came, they were 14th in the league. And some people moan about his style of football, but he's done a very good job. And yeah, I'd give him a 3.5 to 4.
I'm splitting this in two halves. I think if I'm marking Pochettino, I'm giving them a -10. And if I'm marking Jose, I'm giving them a 6 or a 7. So the 14 to 6 is a pretty solid achievement, especially how bad they were with the Pochettino towards the end. He's come in, he steadied the ship, all right, it hasn't been fantastic, and he's not pulled up really any trees, but he found a bit of an identity, if you like, towards the end of the season. He got himself playing a brand of what I would say counter-attacking football, and it seemingly worked. I think they've got some momentum to go into next season, and I think with Jose with a full year and some backing, I think they'll finish top 4. I really like Jose, and I hope he does well.
If I had to make an early prediction, I'd probably say I think Spurs will win a League Cup or an FA Cup next year, because that's what Jose's probably to achieve, to win a trophy. I think he'll do what he's done recently. He'll win a trophy. It'll last a year, maybe 2, and then it'll be off because it's just it'll end badly.
Yeah.
It's a shame. Well, according to Charlie Nicholas, anyway, Wolves and West Ham have basically had the same season, so no need to ask. Aaron, what would you give Wolves out of 10?
It's kind of hard to say because obviously they've had an excellent season, but I'd argue dropping to 7th is poor considering where they were.
Bear in mind, you said you would be in the top 7.
I think they've obviously had a good season, and you've got to give them at least a 7. But the last few games, I think it was when they lost Sheffield United and then Arsenal, they just dropped off to 7th, which is still a good finish. But I think they probably should finish in the top 6, and it'll be interesting to see how they do next year. If they will be able to finally finish in the top 6, or if they're going to kind of drop off a bit because of the another season of the Thursday-Sunday schedule, and especially with the shorter campaign. But for this one, I'd probably give them a 7 or an 8.
Alfie, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. I actually don't think they've been that consistent. I'm surprised they've actually got 54 points. I think they started the season 59 points. Sorry, they started the season with a lot of draws, and they've ended it with quite a few losses. But overall, they're a very good team. They've exceeded people's expectations 2 years in a row, and I'd probably give them an 8 out of 10.
I think it's also quite telling that when we went to Wolves back in October, that was between 2 winless sides, but Wolves shot up the table, and it was really that win against us that kind of kick-started their good form.
Yeah, I do like Wolves. The only thing that annoys me with Wolves and really does get on my nerves is this football Twitter perception that the Barcelona B and they're not. They are literally Stoke from 2009. If you watch them, they are very, very functional. They've got sparkling of talent in the final third, but take that away and they're very functional. And fair play to them. I really like them. I'll give them an 8.5 out of 10. So I think to do what they've done for the 2 years in the Premier League with Europa League non-stop, and to only lose 9 games, top 7 again, an improvement on the points they got. They're still in the Europa League, by the way. I would give them an 8.5 out of 10. I think that's been a fantastic job. Arsenal, I'll go to you, Aaron. What are you going to give Arsenal?
Been a poor season for Arsenal, being brutally honest. 8th place is just not very good. Arteta, I think in a way, I feel people overrate the job he's done, but also I think people underrate it a little bit because he's definitely improved them on what Unai Emery was doing, but they've still got a lot of work to do. So, you got to give them a good, I think, probably a 2 or a 3, because 8th is just not good enough for Arsenal.
Yeah, Alfie, what would you say?
I'd say 3 as well. They've just not been good enough. The same as Aaron, they've just been pathetic, really, for Arsenal standards. Obviously, if they win the FA Cup, their overall season does move up to a 5. But their performance in the Premier League has been borderline disgusting. And I'd give them a 3.
How I look at it is, I think Arteta's done a decent job in getting results. I think they could easily be on the 44, 45 point mark with Newcastle and Palace and that, if he didn't decide after lockdown that he was going to be a bit more pragmatic. But before lockdown, they were averaging a high amount of possession. But since lockdown, he's decided to get results on the board to get some confidence going. I'll give him some credit for that, because I think that takes a lot of bravery to do that, to sacrifice what you probably want to do in terms of getting results. Unai Emery was a -1 this season. He was woeful. Brett Youngberg, he was a -1. Arteta, I would give a 6 to. I think he's a 6 or a 7.
Yeah,
because
I think also Arsenal's kind of a weird one in that they really strike me as a team who just they weren't doing anything. They were heading towards a mid-table finish, but then suddenly towards the end of lockdown, around that period, they started. They only finished a few points off 7th, which was mad considering it was pretty much before lockdown. So I'll give Arteta credit there. He's improved them defensively, and that's the key thing. He's set up in a way that they will grind out results rather than play attractive football or anything like that.
I'll give Arsenal a 4. I think that's perfect. It could go up to a 5 if they win the FA Cup, but I still don't think it's been a good season, because I just don't think he's laid a glove on anyone, really. They're not that Arsenal, are they? They've got no fear factor. One team who wasn't a 4 was Sheffield United. Aaron, what were you giving them?
To start things off, Chris Wilder is my manager of the season, because
Well, tell us that later.
I think that says it all, because everyone expected Sheffield United to be rock bottom of the league. A lot of people did anyway. I myself had them 16th. Admittedly, I hadn't watched them enough last season to really kind of understand their style of play, but I knew they were an organised unit. I knew they would be decent enough defensively, and I was confident that they'd stay out. I was confident that they'd do the best out of the 3 promoted sides. But to be in contention for Europe throughout the season is just a phenomenal job, and Chris Wilder does all the credit he gets.
Yeah, well, you're giving them out of 10.
9.
9, okay. Alfie?
I'd give him 9.5. If I gave Klopp a 9.5, Liverpool a 9.5, I've got to give Sheffield a 9.5. I think they've been fantastic. I think for most of the season, Klopp was my manager of the season. Now it's probably Wilder. I just think he's been excellent. The job he's done is incredible, considering his team's only scored 39 goals, yet they've still finished 9th. That's quite an achievement. And I had him rock bottom, and it was an awful prediction from me. I'd give him 9.5.
Not quite that Fulham one.
Yeah, not quite the Fulham one. For context, everyone, last season, I predicted Fulham to go down when everyone had them around 12th. So I'm taking quite a lot of credit for that.
You need to stop banging on about that prediction, Alfie.
We're coming back up again now, don't worry about it. So what, 9.5 out of 10 for Sheffield United. So I'm going to go and say I'm going to give them a 10 out of 10, because if you look at Sheffield United's remit at the start of the season, is if they finish 17th, they're getting a 9 for that, because their squad, their budget, really, the limitations of the team, 17th would have been an excellent season. The fact they finished 9th is stupendous, really. I don't know how you cannot give. If we had all said at the start of the season, rather come to you two and said Sheffield United would finish 9th, you'd all give them a 10, surely.
Oh yeah, 100%. I said, even just being around Europe throughout the season was an incredible achievement. But dropped off a bit, but you can't deny that 9th is a fantastic achievement for them.
I'll go as far as to say that if we didn't have the break, they were in such good form that they could have challenged top 4, because they had that much momentum, and I just didn't think they were going to be stopped. When I think after they beat Bournemouth 2-1 was the last game or something, and I think at that point they looked unbeatable. Obviously they had the break and they weren't quite the same, but 9th is an incredible achievement. I'm giving them a 10. Burnley, Aaron.
I think Burnley was one of those teams that I had kind of staying up, but not really doing a lot. Just another mediocre mid-table finish. But I'll give a lot of credit to Sean Dyche and Burnley. They've finished 10th. I believe they were quite close to Europe at one point during the season. In fact, they're still only 5 points. They finished only 5 points away from 7th. So I'd probably give them an 8 out of 10. It's not quite on the level of Sheffield United just because they've only just come up. But you got to give all the credit to Sean Dyche, and he's really defying expectations with the whole anti-football thing, which I kind of disagree with, because I said a few podcasts ago that his style may not be attractive to watch, but it works for them because they have the players to play that sort of football, and that's the only thing that matters.
Yeah, Alfie, what are you going to give Burnley?
I'd give them an 8.5. Once again, they've been fantastic. Them and Sheffield are the real overachievers of this season. I think I had Burnley 15th, and I'll probably end up putting them there again next year. Yeah, they've really overachieved. The goalie especially, he's been fantastic. I'd actually say he's probably been the best keeper outside the top 6 this season. Pope has been incredible. Tarkowski as well, an excellent defender. And overall, their squad is very underrated. Each and every player gives their all. The left back's good. Dwight McNeil's good. I just think their whole squad has performed really well this season. And Sean Dyche is getting the very best out of every single one of them. Even that bloke Long, he even made him look half decent.
Yeah, anyone who... If this is the first time anyone has listened to one of these podcasts but follows me on Twitter knows I am a huge fan of Sean Dyche.
That's an
and his style
understatement.
of football, and his style of football, and his organisation, and his man management. And I think even me, well, I did say in the group chat I could see them challenging for 10th. I got spoken down to because of that, but I had them around 13th, 14th, if I remember right. I just thought they'd be around where Newcastle are. I thought they'd be well comfortable, but drop off. The fact that they finished 10th from 54 points is a ridiculous achievement, really. The fact that 54 points is I look at is incredible, because you've seen teams in the past like the 16-17 strikes me where they finished 10th from 41 points because it was that bad. But this season the quality was up and they've still finished 10th. I'm gonna give Dyche and Burnley a 9. Same as Liverpool, I'll have them on that kind of level, because I think 10th for Burnley is just ridiculous. And no matter what anyone can tell me, no one ever has a right to win a game in the Premier League when they finish the game with Kevin Long in centre mid, who's a centre back who's not very good. Eric Peters off the right. I think Ian Woan, the assistant manager, was doing a role somewhere against Palace. So full respect to Burnley. And
Even Matej Vidras had a bit of a breakout season in the Premier League, and I've got to commend that, because he didn't really do much at West Brom, and he didn't get a chance at us in the Prem.
he has, and I think what we've spoken about before, and is Dyche this season's really got the best out of him, because he's played them up with someone who's a bit more robust, like Wood or Rodriguez, and he's found a lot more space, whereas in the past he's been isolated when he's played in the Prem, I think West Brom, wherever, and he's done quite well, Vidra. So fair play to Burnley. Aaron, Southampton, what are you going to give them?
Similarly to Leicester, you can kind of split it into two halves. When we played them at the end of November, they were a relegation rival. They beat us, and they went on a very, very good run of form. So when you consider the 9-0 defeat to Leicester, Ralph Hasenhuttl has managed to kind of reorganise that squad and get them comfortable. They finished nowhere near relegation. They finished only 2 points off 10th. Ralph Hasenhuttl is one of my favourite coaches in the Premier League, and I give him a strong 7, just for the way he's managed to steer them well away from relegation early on, get them fighting for top 10. And if I had to make an early prediction, is that Southampton will challenge for Europe next year.
Yeah, that's a good prediction. Alfie?
I'd give them a 7. They've been helped a lot, to be fair, by Danny Ings' goals. Che Adams is starting to look quite decent now. Whether that form will continue on to next season, we will see. But overall, Southampton have had a really good second half of the season. first half of the season they were quite poor. Against Leicester, it looked like they'd fielded 11 squirrels onto the pitch because they were just horrific. That's one of the worst performances I've ever seen in Premier League history. But overall, they've been second half of the season. They've been fantastic. I said last time I came onto the podcast, Hassan Hootel's in my top 6-7 managers in the league, and I stand by that. He's a really good manager, and I think next season Southampton are only going to get better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I'd
I
give
agree.
him 7.
Yeah. I've even when he first came in, I really like Ralph Arsenal. I'm worried about his suitability for a team that looked doomed every time he played a game. I wondered if he could have took a different team, but he's gone in there and he's really made it work. They're really strong. They're good to watch. They've got goals. They've improved defensively. And I agree with Adam. I think they're pushing top 9 next season. So I think they're that well drilled. They've got so much momentum. I think they're and the midfield really strong as well. I'll give Southampton a 7 as well because the first half was really shaky, but second half of the season they've been fantastic. The best they probably looked since Ronald Koeman left. As for in 12, who that ruined was Everton and Aaron. Go on, what were you giving Everton?
Towards the end of the Marco Silva reign, I was just laughing for the fact that they were just so close to relegation. We warned you. Marco Silva was just terrible this season at Everton. He deserved the sacking. I'd argue that happened too late. Probably should happen in the summer. But again, you can kind of split it into two halves. I've not been overly impressed with Everton recently, but I think that's mainly due to the players who I just don't rate at all, most of them. Ancelotti's done a decent enough job to kind of steer them well away from relegation, where they were under Silva. I'd give them maybe a 4 because 12 isn't good enough. I mean, you can answer this, but I believe this is the first time they finished outside the top 10 since Martinez's second season, I believe.
Martinez's third season as well, twice in 3 seasons. I'll have you know.
So yeah, it's been a pretty dismal campaign for Everton on the whole, but I think with improvements, which definitely need improvements in the summer, then they should start pushing higher up the league.
Yeah, Alfie, what are you giving Everton?
I'll give Everton a 5. Under Silva, they looked disgraceful. There's no other way to put it. They was terrible. And under Ancelotti, they have improved a lot. A couple dodgy results lately, and you get the delusional Everton fans on Twitter. God, Everton Street, the man claiming they're getting top 6 next season. Honestly, I don't know what goes through that guy's head. But I'd give Everton a 5. I think they will improve a lot next season. Give Ancelotti a full summer transfer window and a full season. Everton will definitely improve. I'd give them a 5.
Yeah, if you'd have asked me in December when Marco Silva was doing this stuff, I'd have given Everton a 1, a 0 even, because we were just pathetic. Yeah, no backbone, no discipline. We didn't really score goals. We didn't stop conceding them. We looked very predictable, easy to beat. He wouldn't change things. He had this 4-3-3 passed off in the future when he had the players. He played at the 4-2-3-1, didn't suit the players really, and it led us to being 18th in the league. Duncan Ferguson gave us a bit of a lift to get us some momentum, and then Carlo Ancelotti's come in and he's took us essentially from there to mid-table, which is essentially all we wanted when he came in because we were that bad. He gave us the 4-4-2, which Ferguson helped create, which just give us a bit more defensive stability. A few tweaks within that. The midfield isn't good enough, but then again, that's unavoidable at the moment. So I think overall, just because of Ancelotti's effort to get 49 points, which was a well way off when we were on 12 and 14 in December, I'll give Everton a 5, but it's a very tenuous 5, and it could have been higher if we'd have won some of the last home games and maybe finished 9th or 10th. But I feel we've matched the same points total that Everton got when Sam Allardyce was there 2 years ago. difference is now you're looking to push on with better younger players than a team that just everyone hated each other back then. So I'll give a 5. I'm not overly impressed with anything we've really done, but I feel like a decent job from Ancelotti, but Silva's input into that has to just knock us down a few pegs. Aaron, what would you give Newcastle?
I've said it before. I'll say it again. Got it wrong on Steve Bruce. He's done a good job. Done a better job actually than Rafa Benitez did, by the way. I think I had them relegated, not because of the squad they had, because I always kind of thought they had a decent enough team to survive. I put a tweet out after Rafa Benitez left that if they got a Chris Hughton, Steve Bruce as coach, someone that will keep them organised, keep them from conceding too many goals. They won't be pretty, but they'll stay up, and that's exactly what's happened. The reason I got it wrong in the summer was because I just didn't rate Steve Bruce. But I think 13th is a very solid finish, and I'd probably give them a 6 out of 10.
Alfie?
I'm gonna quote Aaron on this one. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I got it wrong on Steve Bruce. He's done a good job. 13th in the league isn't bad at all, especially for a club with as many problems as Newcastle. I don't rate their midfield overall. West Ham have been linked with Sean Longstaff today. I'd rather drive off a cliff. But yeah, they have overachieved. And with a striker that's only scored 2 goals this season, you've got to commend the job Steve Bruce has done. St. Maximin in the second half of the season has added a bit of end product to his game, and overall he's a very good player. And I rate a few of their defenders. And Dubravka's not a bad keeper. I'm not his biggest fan, as you know, but he's not a bad keeper. And overall, I think they've just done they've had a really decent season. John Joe Shelby, I'd also like to shout out. I rate John Joe Shelby. I think he's a very underrated player, a very good passer. And I think I'd give Newcastle a 6.5 to 7 for this season.
Have a guess who didn't get it wrong about Steve Bruce? Yeah, me again.
Postman Pat.
Yeah. Newcastle. I thought you'd be fine. I always thought Steve Bruce would play to the strengths of the team. If he'd got Abram Grant in, I'd have had them bottom because I think he'd have done something mad. I think with Bruce, he knew he's done what essentially I thought he would do. Tough to beat, not brilliant to watch, but 44 points and 13th is where they were last season, I think. So, yeah, it's a good sound job from Bruce, considering the stick he got. I'll give him a 7 out of 10. I think he's done a good job, Bruce. Aaron, what are you giving Crystal Palace?
Since the Bournemouth game after lockdown, they've just been terrible. They were on the verge of Europe, I believe. So the fact they dropped off so dramatically and he finished 2 points ahead of Brighton, who are in a relegation battle for a lot of the season, it's quite telling. It's just been another very average campaign on the whole, if you consider that, and the fact they finished just mediocre mid-table finish again. So it's probably just a standard 6 out of 10 because they haven't played good football. They've been pretty solid defensively, but they need. There are serious problems going on at Palace, and I worry for them if they don't strengthen in the summer.
Yeah, Alfie, what are you giving Palace?
Yeah, as Aaron said, up until the Bournemouth game, I would have given them an 8 to 8.5. But after that, they have just been diabolical. So overall, I'll still give him a 6.5. They've not been bad. It's just a typical sort of Palace sort of season overall. They've been linked with Eberechi Eze today, and I'm praying to God they don't sign him. I'm praying to God Golden Sullivan actually reach into their back pockets and not to grab a dildo, to grab some money. So yeah, I really am hoping we sign Eze. But yeah, Palace overall have had a decent season. Ayu's exceeded his and my expectations with 9 goals. Zaha has underperformed a little bit, so it's really impressive to see Palace not being near the drop zone despite Zaha not having his best season. So overall, yeah, I'd give him a 6.5.
Yeah, as I say every single season with Crystal Palace, as long as they're in the Premier League with that ridiculous net spend, with an aging squad with no goals in, I said at the start of the season they'll struggle to score goals, and that's essentially what was happening. They've struggled to score goals because yet again the manager's not been back. He's done everything he can to improve them defensively. You've got a decent point total, a decent place, considering you've spent absolutely nothing. And the team below them actually spent about 80 million quid for their woes. So I think fair play to Palace. They need a bit of a plan in terms of what they're going to do with younger players and whatnot. But I would say I would give Crystal Palace a 7.5 out of 10. And that's because every year they're in the Premier League. That's a good season for them. Aaron, Brighton.
It's kind of the opposite of Crystal Palace because they're in a relegation battle for a lot of the season, but since lockdown they've been pretty excellent, if I'm being honest. I think this is their best ever Premier League points tally. So you can't knock that. They've finished nowhere near relegation in the end. They've finished above 40 points. I think it's probably been a solid 7 out of 10, just considering everyone had them to go down. And while they were in a relegation battle for a lot of the season, they didn't in the end finish near it. And I think with a bit more backing in the summer, I believe they'll finish comfortably mid-table, close to top 10 next season.
Alfie.
I did say Graham Potter's not that bad a manager, but I'm still overall quite unsure on Brighton. I'm not sure how they'll do next season, but this season's been decent for them. As Aaron said, I think I also had them in a relegation zone, and they didn't go down. They impressed overall, and defensively they wasn't bad. Much better than the likes of West Ham, Watford, and Bournemouth, which has been sort of their best point. Going forward, they're not as good as the likes of West Ham, but they've made up for it with their defending. And Graham Potter's teams tend to play a decent, attractive brand of football. So I'm sure Brighton fans overall are quite impressed with the way they've played and the way they've conducted themselves this season. So I'd give them, same as Palace, 6.5.
I just want to add to that. I just want to say I didn't have them in the bottom two. I had them 14th in the summer. So I'll take that as the best.
Fair play to Brighton. I had them in the relegation zone in the summer. I probably shouldn't have done, considering they spent about 80 million, and if you spend 80 million, you shouldn't be up and down, really, should you? But, well, unless you're Bournemouth, which we're going to. Do you know, since lockdown, I've been, and you can quote, this will be on someone's tweet in years to come, Owen Parks, have been really impressed with Graham Potter. He's really, really surprised me in terms of how he set his team up. He looked to be a bit more defensive, which is what he should have done anyway, considering he's got a strong defence. He's passed the ball through the middle quite well. He could not got a lot of goals, but if they buy a striker, I don't know if that's in the pipeline. I think they need a striker. If they buy a good striker and they keep Trossard, I don't know if he's been doing well lately, but he was good at one point. They keep the defensive units. I think Brighton could be all right next season, but I still think they need to find some consistency and stick to a bit more of a disciplined style of play, which has got them essentially clear of safety in the end, because the initial tiki-taka football they were playing initially had them right in the mire. So I'd give Brighton a 7 out of 10.
He's praising Graham Potter. This is a massive first.
Also, I'd like to say, with Ben White going back to Brighton next season, that partnership of Lewis Dunk and Ben White will be a very, very good partnership.
Yeah, sure. I look at them and I think their strength is defending, and if you don't play to that, I think they'll struggle. If they do, I think they'll be around where they are again. I think the thing with Potter is why I got annoyed with him, and this isn't even replacing Chris Hughton thing. This was he's the next Guardiola thing, where all he's done was finish 13th or something with Swansea. Steve Cooper's in the top 6 with them now. Probably could get to the final. He didn't do that well at all there, but he's done well at Brighton, to be fair to him, and he did well in Boston runs as well. So fair play, Potter. You've gazumped me that season, fella. West Ham, Aaron.
It's been a very underwhelming campaign. I'm sure Alfie will know more about it. But I think it's safe to say a lot of people had them in the top half, maybe pushing towards Europe in the summer. They really should have had the squad, had the players to do so, but there's been a relegation scrap all season. Since lockdown, after the after the first 2 or 3 games, they're quite poor, but after that, pretty much since the Chelsea win, they've been much better. They've showed a lot more fight. David Moyes deserves credit for getting them out of it, and on the whole, it's been a pretty poor season. I'll probably give them a 3 or a 4, but they've really improved towards the end, and it's a big summer for West Ham.
Alfie, your boys, what are you giving them?
God, if you told me at the start of the season West Ham will finish 16th, I probably would have jumped off a cliff once again. It's been underwhelming to say the least. I'd give us a Desmond a 2 to a 3. Some might say that's a bit harsh, but unfortunately, when you're spending 40 million on Haller, 25 million on Fornals, 35 million on Anderson, 2 of the 3 players have been very underwhelming, and you just
Reading off a
can't.
list of ridiculous transfer fees.
Yeah, we compete with Everton in that category. But anyway, Pellegrini's signings.
More, by the way.
Pellegrini's signings were just really, really poor, and David Moyes has come in and done quite an. I don't think he's done the job that's been as. I don't think he deserves as much praise as some people have been giving him. But after lockdown, especially, we've been doing very well, bar the Wolves and Spurs game. And I think we've got 1 loss in 7 now, which isn't bad at all. So we had a very good start to the season where people were saying, "Oh, West Ham are going to get top 6," and we had a very good end to the season where people were saying, "Now next season, oh, West Ham are going to get top 6," but we won't. We'll get 12th or 13th. And overall, I'd give our season, as I said, Desmond very poor, Anderson out.
Okay. By the way, if you're saying West Ham are going to finish in the top 6, I will quote me now. West Ham will be in 10, 15 points in the top 6 next season. Not a chance, but anyway. West Ham, again, at the start of the season, I didn't think they'd do very well. That corpse of a manager, Pellegrini, I've never rated him even when he was at City. I think he's a woeful manager. Don't think his teams have any kind of motivation to play. And it had no surprise to me that West Ham were in the bottom 3. I did think they'd do a bit better because I thought Haller would dig them out, but he didn't, and that's why West Ham were in the bottom 3. It was a slow start, but Moyes has done the job essentially he was asked to do, keep West Ham up. I'll give Moyes a 7, but West Pellegrini a 2. So overall, I'll give them a 3, I think, because I don't think West Ham should be 16th.
Yeah.
For as much as I don't rate a lot of the players, I don't think they should be 16th either. Aaron, Aston Villa.
I fully expect to be crucified by any Aston Villa fans listening to this, but I still just don't think they're any good. The reason they stayed up was pretty much because Bournemouth and Watford were just somehow even worse than them. Dean Smith is still not a good coach. I still pretty much think they're Grealish FC. But the most important thing is they finished 17th. They finished points above relegation, and that's about where they should have been, based on the players that they signed. That they just weren't very good. A lot of people had them comfortably in mid-table, and Villa fans were saying they're not going to be another Fulham. I completely disagreed with that. I expected them to go down. So they've done well towards the end. They've shown more fight towards the end to get out of get out of it. But on the whole, it's been a pretty poor season for Villa, and I'd probably give them a 3 just for the fact that they've managed to stay out towards the end.
Yeah, Alfie, Villa.
I thought I'd just like to start by saying I thought their celebrations after staying up were pathetic for a club the size of Aston Villa. I was embarrassed for the way they were celebrating. I agreed with Roy Keane. It was embarrassing. But overall, I'd give Villa a 5 just because I had them to go down. That's the only reason. I still think they wasn't very good. I agree with Aaron. Their squad isn't very good, bar their midfield. I am very impressed with the likes of Douglas Luiz, who has been excellent after lockdown. And I just don't think they're any good. I can still see them going down next year. You know, Villa fans will be in my mentions saying that's absolutely ridiculous. Probably the most deluded fan base in the league, by the way.
Seeing people say they're going to challenge Champions League next year, by the way.
No way.
Oh, apparently they're in for some summer, because in February I saw a post saying they're buying Luther Dean and Odegaard and Calvert-Lewin and all kinds of
yeah.
wealth coming to Villa. A whole kind of untold wealth coming to Aston Villa. I believe it when I see it. Early prediction: they finish bottom on 24 points next season.
I think Swansea will finish bottom personally if they come up, which I think they will.
Yeah. You keep on saying this, Alfie, but they yet to come up. I think Fulham will probably come up and they'll probably finish bottom, to be fair. But I think Fulham, West Brom, I think Fulham, West Brom and Villa will be my three if things stay as they are. But yeah, I would give Aston Villa a 5 out of 10. I thought they'd go down and they stayed up, so fair play. I think they've been woeful. I think for large spells of the season, they've been the worst team in it. I think just at the odd moment from Grealish just pulled them out from trouble. That's essentially what's kept them up. They've got a bad defensive record. They haven't scored a bag full of goals either. I think they've been really poor, and I think they've been very lucky to stay up, especially with some very contentious VAR decisions that has essentially kept them up in the end. I would give them a 5 though, because I didn't think they would, but they should be a little bit higher considering they spent a lot of money. Now the bottom three, Aaron, Bournemouth.
I really can't stress enough that the reason I gave Villa a 3 is because I honestly believe that there weren't enough relegation places this year. Bournemouth have been terrible, bar the end of the season where they showed a bit more fight. They've just been horrendous. I've not been impressed with them for the most part. Eddie Howe's finally proving to be the glorified PE teacher that I've always said he is. They've got an okay squad, but they don't score enough, especially compared to previous seasons, and they concede far too many. And I don't think anybody can have any complaints about the fact that Bournemouth have been relegated. So I'd probably give them relegated, so I can't get them any higher than a 1, really.
Yeah. So Alfie, Bournemouth.
Bournemouth are a club that I've never seen a club that gets defended more by pundits in my life.
Yeah.
They were awful. I don't see how people are defending them this season. They were awful. People were saying, yes, Eddie Howe's done a great job to get them to the Premier League, but this season, for the money they've spent, they've been disgusting. They've been more open than a sliced tomato. Defensively, they are woeful, and they've not even been good going forward. I think they've had the least open goals in the league. I think that's what Jamie Carragher said, and if that is true, that is disgusting. So defensively, they're poor. Going forward, they're terrible. What's Eddie Howe got to offer? It's just a terrible season for Bournemouth. And if you told me they get relegated at the start of the season, I would have been shocked. I'll be honest. I think I had them 14th or 15th. But just watching the way they've played this season makes me want to vomit it. And they deserve to go down. I'd give them a Desmond again. Or a 1, actually. I'll give them a 1.
Alfie, can you stop giving them a dead? Yeah. Just as a point of reference, at the start of the season, I had Bournemouth in 18th place. And where did he finish? 18th place. I'm at it again, aren't I? Bournemouth Football Club, that manager. He's still getting some praise now. What a job he's done. Fight for to the end. Well, I tell you what, if you look at their budget, look at Bennis' budget, it's night and day, and they've ended up finishing 20 whole points behind them. So, yeah, it's not so good.
You need to stop. You need to stop using Eddie Howe as a reason to praise Sean Dyche.
Oh yeah. No, they're mutually exclusive things. I've been dripped especially from Owen Doyle in the chat, how brilliant Eddie Howe is for about 2 years now, and he's pretty woeful. I'm going to give them a 1 because they've got relegated and they shouldn't be anywhere near relegation because they spent a lot of money, and he's apparently the next England manager, isn't he? So Good luck, England. All I'm going to
Yes.
say.
Speaking of Eddie Howe, just for a second, I just want to. I don't know if this is a possibly controversial opinion. I'm not going to comment on how they're going to do next year in the championship, but I'm gonna stick my neck on the line and say they need to part ways with him regardless, because if they manage to come up again, I think they'll just be in the same position, and then there needs to be an end of the Eddie Howe Bournemouth eventually.
Yeah, I agree.
I would agree, but he's got so much responsibility in that club. With a relegation, I think it'll be difficult to manage. I think what he ideally needs to do is take them up, keep them up, and then leave. He should have left ages ago. I think he's a pretty abject manager, to be honest. I've always thought he is. Ever since I've just seen his team just slide off runs of just 12 defeats. He gets way too much credit. There's people in like the last couple of years who wanted him as our manager. God, you'll see me good as an hero. Woeful. But we'll go on to Watford. Aaron?
Am I able to give Watford any higher than a 1? Can I give them a 0?
You can give a 0.
It's just been terrible throughout. You can literally split the season into 3 parts with 3 managers, because Javi, he wasn't backed properly. We signed Sarr, but he wasn't the right signing, for being honest, as good as he is. We didn't strengthen the defence enough, and that basically meant we were so bad at the back. They decided to sack Javi, which form-wise was the correct decision, but the decision to bring back Flores was a terrible decision. They were just so abject throughout the 10 games. He picked up 6 points in 10 games with only 1 win. Barely scored any goals. He kept a few clean sheets, but we weren't scoring enough. Nigel Pearson came in. There's no denying the job he did. But the only time we were really any good under Pearson was the first kind of 6 games or so during that manager bounce, where we won against Villa, against Wolves, against Bournemouth, against Man United. However, since the end of January, where we lost in the last minute to Aston Villa, relegation 6-pointer. Then we bottled a 2-goal lead against Everton. His tactics and decisions have been absolutely horrendous. There was a lot of backlash to the decision to sack Pearson, but timing-wise, yeah, it was a little bit odd, but the sacking itself is completely justifiable for me. I mean, Alfie saw how bad we were in the first half against West Ham in such an important game. To go 3-0 down within 39 minutes is just unacceptable. And yeah, we can have no complaint for the season. It's completely down to the board. As much as I love them, it's completely down to the board, the fact we've gone down. And it's going to be a big summer, a big rebuilding job to come back up. But for the season itself, I can't give us any higher than a 0.
Yeah. Alfie, what are you going to give Watford?
I'll give Watford a 1 or a 2. Because I have to give them the same, or if not better than Bournemouth, because Bournemouth have spent more than them. At first I was against the sacking of Nigel Pearson, as just about everyone on the internet is. But then when Aaron explained the reasons of it to me, I sort of understood a bit more why he was sacked. And I do think if they had Pearson in charge for those last 2 games, they would have done even worse. I don't get what people are saying. Oh, if they still had Pearson, they would have stayed up. They wouldn't have at the end of the day. But overall, they were average. They were poor under Gracia this season, as good as he did last season. Horrendous under Flores. And then at first they did all right under. At first they did all right under Pearson, but then unfortunately the manager bounce sort of ended, and his true capabilities of a manager ended. His substitutions are disgraceful. Let me just say, his substitutions have to be one of the worst in the league.
Yeah, he literally makes the team worse for himself.
Oh no!
Ridiculous.
I've got a match who beats them for substitutions. Don't worry. Jesus Christ, Marco Silva.
Yeah, I think the way to sum up Watford this season is when it was 3-1 West Ham versus Watford in the 70th minute. I was that confident we were going to win. I just went and sat in the hot tub for the rest of the game because I couldn't be bothered to watch anymore. And I just think Watford are they were very poor this season. There's no other way to put it. The way Aaron praises some of their players, you'd think they were first in the league, but yeah.
Yeah, wonderful stuff. I think we're on a full Alfie Jones bingo tonight, aren't we?
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I think he's been a bit harsh on Pearson, to be honest, because I think if you look at the form table since he came in, I think Watford the 13th-ish, something like that. I might be wrong, but the problem you have with someone like Pearson is the motivation factor. When the motivation wears off, he isn't a top class the first division manager. Is he? He's a championship manager. He's very similar in a way to Neil Warner. In the sense that he can get a team fired up in the championship, I reckon, but it the novelty wears off pretty quick in the Premier League. And I think he's a good manager. I think he's being a bit harsh. I think what relegated Watford was not sacking Nigel Pearson, but the appointment of PK Sanchez Flores, who I think historically I quite like as a manager, but he did not fit that Watford team whatsoever. And they were pretty poor. I would give Pearson a 6, Flores a 0, Rassi a 0, so overall about a 2. I was just a bit better than Bournemouth because they didn't spend as much. But finally,
I just want to touch on the whole the whole manager thing, how the motivation bit. You can tell after lockdown how he just wasn't the same presence on the touchline as was previously, and when he's not able to motivate those players, you just know it's going to end badly, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I do agree. I think there's somewhere. I think in a quite odd way, I think his stock has gone up since because of the Watford job, because he's back in the Premier League, and I think people, from the outside will look and think he did a pretty decent job. He just, the timing of his departure and his arrival meant he couldn't finish it. But I think there'll be a Championship club who will take him next season. Yeah, Norwich, what are you giving them?
Again, done even worse than us, haven't they? I mean, to be a newly promoted side, it's going to be difficult, especially if they don't spend, which they didn't. I do think if they had a better manager, they actually could have stayed up because they've got a few decent players. But the problem was they were so open. They conceded far too many goals. Not a fan of Daniel Farke whatsoever. And ultimately, they were deservedly rock bottom, well off survival. You can't get them any higher than a 0.
Yeah, Alfie.
I agree with Aaron. I mean, I've said enough of what I think of Daniel Farke. The man, he's disgusting, isn't he? He's just a disgrace of a manager. When I saw them starting Joseph Dermich in 3 of their last 4 games, I'm just thinking, what is this guy? What is this guy watching? We had Buendia on the bench for a few of the games as well, which is just absolutely ludicrous. The guy shouldn't be getting paid. Actually, I think he should be sued for the way he's managed this season. And as Aaron said, I do actually think they've got a few decent players, but they're just so far open, and their defence. Talk about overrated. Ben Godfrey for 50 million. That guy's he's just terrible. I am better at defending than him, and I can't defend. It's just absolutely ludicrous to me. Yeah, and 21 points is a terrible total. Overall, you can't give him more than a 0.
I do actually think Ben Godfrey is a good defender. I think just the tactics are terrible, and also he's a terrible partner.
Every time I watch him, he's just terrible.
I think a lot of people have found themselves to overrate Norwich. I think there was a piece in the Guardian where you can just put your on 10 pence worth, and I think it was around January, and it was after Norwich beat Leicester 1-0, and there was a guy called Connors who said, and I just quote, "The fact that Norwich are going to get relegated and Burnley are going to stay up shows all that's wrong with the with the world," and I just laughed because the myth they play attractive football is nonsense. They don't. They're just woeful to watch. They don't score. They can't defend. I'm going to go out on a bit of a limb and end this podcast with this. That in the last 5 or so years, I don't think the Premier League has seen a worse manager than Daniel Farke. I
agree.
I just think he's that bad. I look at Cantwell, Buendia, decent players. I do think Godfrey's better than you're saying, Alfie. I think Tim Krul's a decent goalie. I don't think the fullbacks are terrible. Pookie, he's proved he can score goals if you give him the service. I don't think he's brilliant. And then you've got other players who I think you can make work in a system, but he's just made nothing work. He won 5 games, and I hope I never see him in a job again.
Thing is, right, when you say you name their best players, 2 of them are wingers and 2 of them are fullbacks, all wide players, and I think that about speaks for itself that their best players are out wide, and they've got a few decent players in the spine of their team, but overall they're just too open to compete in the Premier League, and that's why they've ultimately been relegated so badly.
Yeah. I hope they sack him this summer. I really hope they sack him and get a proper manager who knows what he's doing, because he's woeful. I'm giving him -1 and I'm ending it there.
Owen, I'd just like to say quickly, I know you said the Premier League's not seen a worse manager in 5 or so years. I don't think the under-9 South East Essex division has seen a worse manager in 5 or so years.
He is bad, isn't he? Apparently he was going to be the next big thing at the start of the season that we should all look out for. I just laugh and laugh at the football hipsters on Twitter. See you all again next season.